Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness! Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining.
Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant! Oh, he hit it! John Morant, insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Parker Fleming. Parker covers the Grizzlies and the NBA draft on his Substack, Subsocolitis. I love that name. Parker, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Keith, I'm great. And I gotta say, you are probably one of the only people, maybe the only person I've podcasted with or talked with that doesn't have to ask me for a pronunciation for Socrates.
I felt confident. I saw what you were going for. I was like, oh, I know that. I'm well aware of what that's referencing.
Yeah, that's the original Big 12. But yeah, no, I'm doing good, man. I'm glad to finally, we're 10 days away from actual Grizzlies basketball, something like that.
That's right. We have preseason coming up very, very soon. Of course, training camp kicks off next week in my neck of the woods, in my backyard at Belmont University in Nashville. I will say also the Grizzlies just officially released their throwback jerseys that we knew were happening, the black throwback jerseys. That, of course, is part of the 25th anniversary of the team moving to Memphis. This will be the 25th season in Memphis. That, of course, inspired you to write your thing about the best 25 or the top 25 Grizzlies players in the Memphis era. That caused me to release my top 10 earlier this week on my show. I will say, now that those throwbacks are coming back, I think this is our chance as a community to get our true number 12 Grizzlies jerseys with that Socolitis on the back. We can now get our Socolitis vintage looking throwbacks. I'm excited about it. So when you have that 12, it's going to be, it's people aren't going to bat an eye when they see the front of the jersey. Then on the back of the jersey, they're going to be like, is that guy's last name? Is that guy's last name? Whatever that is, they're not going to know about the real Jake.
Yeah, shoot. I actually might have to do that. Maybe I can try to ship it to Greece and be like, hey, I'm a longtime supporter of Jake Sacklidis.
There you go.
Substack.
I gotta say, backdrop. I've heard from one of my Patreon supporters, they're getting a Bo Outlaw because there was never the opportunity. I mean, you could go DH Gate or whatever and try to get one made. I mean, I'm telling you, there weren't even DeAnthony Melton jerseys available 5 years ago when they had the same throwback. Now's our opportunity to right all the wrongs. We can create all of our custom throwbacks. I guess they're going to have the Robin Hood patch on there. I'm going to have to get the stitching out to make it look more like an older one. Anyways, Parker, before we dive in actually to your top 25, and I want to go over, you did a thing where you got a media poll of the top 25 players in Memphis Grizzlies history. You also did a fan poll for the most popular player. I guess I do want to hit a couple of news items just to cover them, just to let everyone know what's going on. The Grizzlies, I guess the biggest news about their training camp coming up is JaMychal Cole of the Commercial Appeal reporting that Cedric Coward is a full go. Also, we've gotten news that Brandon Clark is going to be a full go. I feel like with Cedric, so much of the team's enthusiasm or the fan base's enthusiasm and excitement is probably tied up in that. Of course, there's deeper cut stories how's the team look without Desmond Bane and what's going to happen in the wing battle between Gigi and Vince and whoever else. But I think Cedric Coward, since we didn't get to see him at Summer League, he barely played last year in college. And of course, he being one of the crown jewels of the Desmond Bane trade, I think Cedric Coward has a lot of enthusiasm and maybe he's going to be the top thing people are looking forward to maybe as training camp opens.
For sure. And with Coward, there is the mystery alert because we didn't see him in Summer League. but he's a guy that got a lot of steam in the draft. I know Rafael Barlow, who does the NBA Draft Big Board Substack, he had him top 20 all year long. He had him top 20 late lottery, which is what he ended up being. Um, I know Kevin O'Connor with Yahoo Sports was really high on him, and then later it started kind of catching on. I know Sam Facini had him top 10. I had him top 10 in my or I think 10th or 11th on my big board in my draft guide. I know a lot of people in the draft community that were really high on Cedric Howard, and then probably like the big drop from it was draft day when Coach Thorpe of True Hoop came out with an article that
Right.
said draft Cedric Howard with the second overall pick. And with all that buzz, and there's also where because we're victims of this when whenever there's a player that bursts onto the scene and helps a team win a championship, teams are trying to find the next version of that guy. It was for years with Kawhi and Draymond, Pascal Siakam, and I think now it's Jalen Williams, and I think Cedric Howard is the first
Yeah.
oh yeah, could he be the next Jalen Williams? But I think it's also with Cedric Howard, he's the guy really where if he hits, it kind of changes everything back for the Memphis Grizzlies in a positive direction in the John Jaren era.
Yeah.
He's arguably the swing piece of this iteration right now.
Is he the next Jalen Williams or the next Cody Williams? Find out next week as training camp kicks off. Also, speaking of training camp, the Grizzlies, I believe this is their final roster addition to the training camp roster. They signed Braxton Key, a journeyman, a little bit older, a 6'8" big. I'm a little surprised. I'm pretty sure that means no Jemai Meshach for the training camp roster, but they are just getting all their ducks in a row. You got Lawson Lovering and Braxton Key as big bodies on training camp deals, going with PJ Hall on that two-way to replace the absences of Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey as they miss with injury. Now, Parker, let's get into your...
One thing to note, I remember DeMichael, I read back up on this a few days ago about the Jemai Meshach and why he's not on the training camp roster. It's because if they sign him if they do the whole thing where they sign to Exhibit 10 and then waive, then they lose his G League. They lose his player rights. So they don't want to lose his player rights.
There you go.
So
very good clarification. Thank you on that, Parker. All right, but now let's get to the meat of the show, which is talking about the top 25 players in the Memphis era. First of all, Parker, I just want to know, when you did your rankings, what was your personal ranking rubric? I explained mine on the last episode I did. For me, it was a combination of obviously how good the player was on Memphis, and then I heavily weighed longevity. But what was your own personal system that you used to rank your top 25?
Yeah, I mean, obviously talent's the meat and potatoes of it, but I guess also just the impact on winning and kind of what they did for the trajectory of the franchise. Like for example, like my 1, 2, 3, I think pretty non-controversial. I had Zebo, Ja, and Mark, where Zebo, the Grizzlies didn't really experience true playoff success until Zebo. With Ja Morant, the Grizzlies would have entered a rebuild if it wasn't for Ja Morant. Like if the lottery balls bounced one different way, you probably have a true rebuild after the Mike and Mark era. And then obviously Marc Gasol, probably one of the more decorated, and he saved the Pau Gasol trade. He saved a trade that was really supposed to set them back. But yeah, that also impact on winning. I kind of valued more of playoff success as well. Just because that I feel like that's important. I feel like everybody ranks off playoff success nowadays for some reason.
Yeah.
But really, those two things, obviously accomplishments. Like I know Mike Conley may have had more success in the playoffs than Pau Gasol or Jaren Jackson Jr., but those guys are more decorated. I mean, frankly, Jaren's building a case to being the most decorated player in franchise history with his list of accomplishments. So those are kind of what I did for my rubric.
Yeah, that's funny. I was thinking specifically about Jaren, how when you do anything like this, there's recency bias, of course, but then also to me, it seemed like nostalgia weighed even heavier. And I felt like when I'm looking at maybe the media and fan results where I'm like, these people are nostalgic for some pretty average or below average NBA players, which is normal. It was also hard when I heavily weighed longevity when I'm looking at the all-time ranks on the Grizzlies, and you see like Stromile Swift, who Stromile Swift has the best highlights in Grizzlies history outside of Ja Morant. Like Stromile Swift was bad, and so it's like, how do you weigh that? And then I'm looking at a guy like, I tried to do this mental exercise, which was difficult. I don't know how helpful it was, where I'm like trying to imagine past Grizzlies on this current roster, where I'm like, where would JaMychal Green fit in the depth chart? Like, would JaMychal Green play over Santi Aldama? Maybe. Like, he probably would have 2 years ago, maybe not this season. So it's one of those where it's like, how do you weigh those things? And so that did make this a lot of fun to do and trying to figure out. And then of course you come to the very short, or the guys who didn't play very long. Like no one in your media fan, your personal and not in mine, like Tyreke Evans, where like he played 1 year and was good, but like 1 year, what do you do? But then you start getting into 2 years played and you're like, how do I balance like 2 good seasons of Damon Stoudemire or okay seasons when there was no playoff success at all? Like, it's weird stuff like that. Like Eddie, I feel like Eddie Jones, it was later in his career. Eddie Jones is like quite good as far as players who played for the Grizzlies, but it's also like he barely makes a list because he barely played. And like, how do you rank a Bonzi Wells versus someone who's been around much longer?
Yeah. And honestly, like I'm sure, in one of the questions you asked me with most overrated, I feel like one of these things that we do too is we associate what we know of the player based off how they were on another team with how they were on the Grizzlies. And I'm like, I think we're lying to ourselves here.
That's true. So you jumped ahead a little bit. I did send you some preparatory questions, and one of them I do want to ask you is like, who was your most overrated? We can go ahead and get to that. So when you look at the fan vote, your vote, or the media vote, not having gone through it. Actually, I'm going to run through it actually really quick. This was the official media list, and I do think it's interesting to talk about how I said on the last episode I did, I thought there was a clear-cut top 10. And I did my top 10 ranking. And again, thank you for asking me to do this because it was a very fun exercise. And so I came up with my top 10 and I'm like, I feel confident I couldn't put anyone else in the top 10. And it so happened to be, it was a different order than yours, but it was the same 10 players. And then the overall media vote, it was the same 10 players. So I do feel like it's sort of non-controversial who the top 10 players are. Yeah. But the official combined media list, and how many, like, was it like 15 people? 15 people responded. So it's Zach 1, Mark 2, Ja 3, and then Mike Conley, Jaren Jackson Jr., Tony Allen, Pau Gasol, Rudy Gay, Desmond Bane, Mike Miller. That's the top 10. My order was a little bit different. Your order was a little bit different. And then we have Shane Battier, Jason Williams, Dylan Brooks, OJ Mayo, Brandon Clark, Jonas Valanciunas, James Posey, Steven Adams, Stromile Swift, Lorenzen Wright, that's up to 20, and then 21 through 25, Vince Carter, Tyus Jones, Courtney Lee, Kyle Anderson, and then Bonzi Wells. Based on those 25, or just maybe based on anything else, who in your mind, Parker, is the most overrated Grizzly?
Jason Williams.
Interesting. So he was 18th on your list. I think, is that right? 18th on my list. So I actually made a couple notes on your list that I did not send to you.
Okay.
This is a good topic. I wrote, this is wildly low. So why do you think Jason Williams is overrated?
I think, again, for one, I think just there's too much association with his Sacramento days. It's like, oh, he was surely this in Memphis, but I don't really feel like he was.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, you know what? Like, when Jay Will was in Memphis, I was in elementary school. So
there you go.
Look, my memory is not as sharp as others with this list, but I always remembered like Jay Will was never like, so when the team was good,
yes,
he wasn't even a top 4 player on the team. It was Powell, Posey, Battier, Miller.
Oh, that's an interesting argument. That's an interesting argument because I would say Jason Williams absolutely beyond Powell and Mike Miller. That's the argument between is it your starting point guard or your key wing defender, which is like, you need them both. You couldn't have taken away Jason Williams. So that's interesting. And a lot of this, of course, is memory. Yeah. And looking at your list, not in a judgmental way, but in a way where I was like, oh, this is clear that Parker's much younger than I am, because like, I remember there's a couple of people I've talked to where it's like, this is all subjective. This is all based on our memories. And no one has gone back and watched multiple 2004 Memphis Grizzlies games. I'm telling you right now, it's hard to do. First of all, maybe Adam from Grizzlies Film has done it, but it's like so much of this is memory. But also, if you're going to games as a kid and like a player talks to you, that you're gonna like that player, regardless of what like me watching on like UPN in Nashville, where I'm like, this guy's terrible, or whatever. That's a funny one. So like, I will say for Jason Williams, his most famous highlights were on the Kings.
Right.
Running the Kings. But when he got to Memphis, he was very, I would say probably, now this is impossible. Like NBA rank, ESPN just did their NBA rank and everyone's like, what? Zach Edey's 88th and then John Jaren are in the 30s, but like Jason Williams on the Grizzlies got less flashy. He led the NBA in assist to turnover ratio. That was, he was the precursor to all our Tyus Jones stats. Like Hubie Brown got him under control and he was a very good player. And so for that, like for my ranking, he was a solid starter on the Pau Gasol teams. I would say he was like the 20th best point guard. And again, that's wild ballpark in the league at that point, somewhere around an average starting point guard, but he's one of our better players. And then you added the longevity. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it's just kind of one of those for me, like, and like whenever I watched the Grizzlies from back then as a kid, I always associated success with Pau Gasol and then the wings, you know? Mm-hmm. That's just how I always associated their success. I mean, I think also one thing that kind of gets slept on, and maybe it got slept on in this list. I mean, when looking at the media vote, James Posey was 17th, but if you actually like looked at his numbers from the 03-04 season, it's like low-key one of the better seasons from a non-all-star player the Grizzlies have had.
James Posey was awesome. And that's one where, like I already said, I was excited to see everyone else, or like I was excited to see him show up on this because he only played 2 seasons in Memphis, but he was great. And like that's one where it's like if James Posey was on this year's current team, he'd be the starter at the 3 because he was awesome. So James Posey was great. Going back to like I mean, we could wrap up on the Jason Williams. Also, just him still being he's 4th overall in assists. Something about him, like he was a different player, but you're right. He wasn't the player that people forget or remember from all those Sacramento Kings highlights. My most overrated player, and this might be a hill that I just have to die on.
Yeah.
For me, it's Vince Carter.
You know what? That's a part of my belief of we are associating who they were.
Like Vince Carter is a celebrity. So that affects it. And he's gregarious. And like he was like great with media and he's like a likable person. Vince Carter was okay on the Grizzlies. And he obviously was on the Grizzlies during a time where they were good. Like he had success, but like Vince Carter, this is one of those, I mean, you and I both love statistics and you don't want to get carried away. I will admit I can get carried away. You don't want to get carried away with stats, but like Vince Carter's stats on the Grizzlies are horrible. Like he was shooting like under 40%. It was like, man, if Vince was given, I feel like I was on an island back then being like, man, if Vince Carter was any good, that would really help us right now. We desperately need him. So like, it's weird where like our memory of him, cause he's a Hall of Famer. And so like the fact that he came to Memphis, it was cool, but it's like, guys, he was not very good during his Memphis tenure. Meanwhile, no one's like remembering that Bonzi Wells was our go-to scorer, like in crunch time, you know? Yeah.
I think one thing too, that like I did kind of put Vince in this. So I didn't publish my honorable mention because my Substack was saying, oh, it's getting too long for email. And I'm like, well, I want people to get it in email and not through the app. So let me do this. But he did, like, I don't think his first 2 seasons were good, but that 16-17 season when the wing rotation was like Parsons, Ennis, Troy Daniels, Andrew Harrison, and Vince Carter. Vince Carter kind of like saved the season with like his slight resurgence.
Yeah.
So I gave him that, but I mean, I'm just looking at the rest of the list. I'm like, are we like, what are we doing here?
I'm probably holding too much animosity for Vince's first year because that was like the best team. where it was like,
Yeah.
we need you right now. Where's the Vince
Yeah.
Carter? And also it was part of this run of the Grizzlies signing guys and then them being hurt. And it was like, why is Vince Carter so slow? It's like he can barely move out there. So maybe I've got some stuff I need to work through with Vince Carter. Who's your most underrated guy? A guy who you were like, wow, this guy should be higher.
I'm looking at the media list right now. With the fan list, I will say, and I kind of get it, but Powell being 10th kind of like shocked me a little bit.
Yes.
I was like, oh wow. Or actually, no. I looked back at the list just now for this. Rudy Gay at 11. For all the talk about Rudy Gay, and he was at 11.
Yeah.
That
So
was like, oh,
so
whoa.
when I did my list, I had Powell very high. This is where I was very different than you. I had Powell over John Morant,
Yeah.
which again, John Morant, best player as far as peak in the history of the Grizzlies. But I'm still more of like, John needs to do more for me to move him up. But I liked that on the media vote that Powell was very high. And he was 4th on your list. But like, yeah, it is interesting where the legacies of Powell and Rudy Gay have both been tarnished. The story's been written in a way that makes them, I guess, generally less popular. Like I actually was a little surprised that like Mike Conley was 2nd in your fan vote as far as popularity, because I think back to when these guys played, they were not universally beloved. I talk about this with Tony Allen. Everyone now says like, oh yeah, I love Tony Allen, but everyone says that. At the time, everyone did not love Tony Allen. There were call-in show debates like, why is Tony Allen playing? And like, so that part of it's funny where people were frustrated with Mike Conley for so long, but now looking back, the nostalgia, everyone's like, I love Mike Conley. And of course, Mike Conley played the longest, the leading scorer in the franchise history. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, with the fan vote is, I mean, shoot, even I remember when I was a fan during G&G, after that series where the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals where the Spurs literally said, "Hey, we're gonna double the paint and shut everything off for Mike Conley. We're just gonna force the wings to beat us." I was like, they need to maybe move on from Tony and try to go get like a real like floor spacer, like a Redick or a Corver.
Right.
Like,
Well,
that's where I stood, at least.
No, and also this actually leads to one guy on your list. So I haven't read your list. The 2 people on your list that really jumped out as being high to me, and again, this is very subjective. You had Brandon Clark very high. I'll come back to that in a second.
Yep.
You had Quincy Pondexter at 22, and this is one person, and maybe there's an age difference too, where like I really disliked Quincy Pondexter as a basketball player. To me, he was a person who didn't understand how good he was. He had that thing where he had that ultra confidence thing, but also was sort of a bad defender. But like you said, in the playoffs, in the Western Conference Finals where they got swept by the Spurs, he had awesome stats because, like you just pointed out, they were double teaming. They were double teaming Mike Conley, and they were like, "Let's make Tayshaun Prince make a single shot." And Tayshaun Prince could not make a single shot. And then Quincy Pondexter got in there, and they were not guarding Quincy. But Quincy made shots. So his stats were good because the Spurs were like, what are y'all going to do? Have Quincy Pondexter beat us? And so like, that was the plan. So like for me, but anyways, I didn't mean to, that might be one. Also, I have a grudge against Quincy Pondexter. And maybe it's unwarranted.
That's fair. I mean, yeah. I mean, for me, like it's in my criteria, like postseason success. Like Quincy Pondexter showed up and the furthest the Grizzlies have gotten.
Yeah.
And there could have been another year. What's funny is I had during COVID, I had him on my podcast, and this wasn't in the plans, but he went all in on what happened with him and Dave Yeager, and
that's interesting.
And so I was like, okay, like this could have been the starting 3 in a like if this beef wasn't a thing. And with Brandon Clark, it's just one of those. And this is where your memory, but also like your subjective view of basketball is like Brandon Clark's just an awesome basketball player. It's you fairly rarely find yourself like irritated by what Brandon Clark is doing on the basketball court. Like he does a lot of good things, and he's I feel like he is the most heavily responsible for the only playoff series win of this iteration.
There you go.
So, because like I kind of like if you kind of put like positional tiers, like he's in that next group where it's like you can have any sort of ranking between him, Adams, Valanciunas, and Lorenzen Wright. It all
Yeah.
kind of can flow based off your personal, kind of like how with the wings, you can really go any order of Battier, Miller, Posey, and
Hmm.
Dylan Brooks. So that's what for me with Brandon, I had him that high is because he showed up in a massive way in the playoffs, and without him in that Timberwolves series, they might have lost that series. So
Yeah. So I struggled a lot with where to rank Brandon Clark. I think your point about his impact on that one playoff series win is very valid. I was dealing with trying to figure out, this is a guy who I think he's 12th in win shares in franchise history.
yeah,
Actually, I think 11th. Because we throw out Sharif Abdul-Rahim for this exercise.
yeah,
So in the Memphis era, he has the highest field goal percentage by a mile in franchise history. But then I'm also trying to deal with, okay, he's been here for a long time, but he rarely starts. He doesn't play heavy minutes. How do I rank? I ranked Valanciunas and Steven Adams over him because like those were the starters, even if Steven Adams got sort of benched in that Timberwolves series, as no one ever talks about. Like,
yeah,
it's just hard to figure out. Like, I'm not sure how to rank them. I ended up putting, although I haven't released it yet, in my 11 through 25 list, I ended up putting Valanciunas and Steven Adams over Brandon Clark. Also, I ranked Desmond Bane really high. And one thing I didn't mention on my show was, guys, he was awesome in the only playoff series win the Grizzlies have had in, was it 11 years? Like,
yep.
Desmond Bane was awesome. Desmond Bane and Brandon Clark were awesome in that series. And like, they were kind of the MVPs in a way. I mean, of course, they're benefiting from all the attention paid to John Morant and to Jaren Jackson Jr. So that was, it's interesting to try to weigh in that playoff, the specific roles, and then looking at like, it's a backup. Where does he fit? It's hard to figure out where to place him.
Yeah. I would say too, one guy that I felt like was pretty underrated across all lists because again, I only have good memories of this player is Darrell Arthur.
Yeah.
And Darrell Arthur was really good. Like I feel like, especially this is a very young, like in NBA years, this is a very young franchise.
Yes.
25 years isn't that long of a time, and when you don't have like the Grizzlies have also been fortunate with these playoff teams, but also like because it's only 25 years old, you're not littered with stars. Like this isn't like if you did this for like the Boston Celtics or Los Angeles Lakers or New York Knicks, it gets a little trickier, but like and the criteria gets a little stronger. But like Darrell Arthur was good. He had a signature skill. He had playoff moments. Like I felt like he was just good and reliable.
I would. That's funny because Darrell Arthur had a devastating. I can't remember if it was what Achilles. Part of his leg. Was it Achilles? Okay, I knew it was a leg injury, and he never got it back after that. Yeah. So like his time on the Grizzlies, where like he was like a promising big on horrible teams, and then eventually when they turned it around, when Zebo showed up for the first season where they didn't make the playoffs, he was good. Like he was athletic. He was an exciting young player. Then he missed the whole next year where they went to the playoffs. And then he was not good after the injury. So that falls under the, I don't know how to rank basically one really promising young season where like, honestly, Costa Koufos, who hasn't been mentioned anywhere, Costa Koufos, probably a better backup big than Darrell Arthur. Definitely post-injury Darrell Arthur. So like that again comes to, where do I rank Costa Koufos on my list? Because I'll be real, when I started getting down to like, when you get down to the Stromal Swifts, we were like, he was way worse than Costa Koufos. But what do I do here? Parker, let's take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about our opinions on the best 25 players in Memphis Grizzlies history. All right, Parker. So who was a player on these lists, maybe the fan result or the media result? Were there any guys who you thought this guy's not going to be respected, but then it turns out he was, and you were pleasantly surprised. I've already mentioned again, James Posey was one for me where I'm like, oh, I didn't know everyone else loved him. I'm glad to see he was represented. Was there any player that you were like, hey, that guy actually got the recognition that I thought maybe he wasn't going to?
I will say, because he is my favorite end of the bench player of all time with Jake Sakalidis, I'm very surprised that Hamed Haddadi made the top 25.
To be clear,
the fan
popularity vote. Yeah. That was great.
Let me start with the fan. Let me start with the fan first, because this is where you kind of think of like the respect and all that. Seeing Tyus Jones like in this list was really cool. I just thought, awesome basketball player, kind of helped, with his performance as the backup when that season when Ja missed 30, I think it was 30 games in the 21-22 season. Like they don't have the season they have if Tyus didn't step up in the way that he did. So that was cool. I guess from the media consensus, well, I had it. Let's see. For the media consensus, I like that. I feel like that, and the list. I'm glad that like the top 7 was right. Like in some order, there wasn't any surprises. Core 4 plus Powell plus John Jaren.
Yeah. I did, by the way, Parker. I put Desmond Bane over Tony Allen, despite Tony Allen being my favorite player. Desmond Bane was so good. So
Desmond Bane is amazing. I get that.
Tony Allen. Sure. My argument boiled down to Tony Allen was never mentioned as a top 40 player in the NBA. Where like Desmond Bane has been around that, top 50. So like I had, and Desmond Bane also has similar longevity. Tony Allen played a little bit more. Desmond Bane helped us win a playoff series as one of the better players. I feel like that was on par. But anyways, keep going.
I think the player I'm glad who got the respect, at least in the media vote. I'm glad Dylan Brooks got the flowers that he got, just because of how poorly the run ended.
Yeah.
But also too, also too, again, nostalgia can kind of play away where, you could have looked down and like, oh wow, Dylan Brooks is at 17th. Where if you're gonna be completely real, if he had a cleaner shot selection and even shot 3% better from 3, I would have him ahead of like Mike Miller and Shane Battier.
Yeah. Oh, that might be too rich for my blood, but no, you're right. Dylan's one where you run into, and this is, I guess, you deal with the guys like Tyus Jones, like you said earlier. That's where you run into how young the franchise is.
Yeah.
Where you're like, wait a minute, I think Tyus Jones has an ironclad case based on having played, was it 5 seasons on the Grizzlies? Like
5 seasons, yeah.
Yeah, like he's in all these top 10, top 20 lists in the franchise's history. It's hard to deny him. And Dylan, of course, started so many games for the Grizzlies, won so many games as the Grizzly, that even when you look at maybe his advanced numbers or just his field goal percentage, you're like, yeah, not ideal, but yeah, you basically have to put him in your top 15.
Yeah. So that was probably the player out of all of them where I'm like, I'm glad that he got the flowers that he deserves. Nothing really else on like the fan vote's a fan vote. There are some that I look and I'm like, oh wow, like somebody had, and this is awesome to see, but somebody had John Conchar as their favorite player. Whoa, that's crazy.
I wouldn't trust that person.
I guess also the fact, like, granted, and when it's grading like the within like the, I feel like everyone got the fan favorite right with the core 4 plus John Jaren. I was really worried that Jaren wouldn't. I thought maybe, is it gonna turn out to be one of those things where like Rudy Gay's voted over him or Shane Battier, because Twitter's a loud echo chamber, but also it shows that Twitter's not real life. So I'm glad I'm glad Jaren got his flowers in the fan vote, and I'm glad Dylan got his in the media vote.
I don't think I finished this thought that I started earlier when you said like Jaren's on his way to maybe being the most decorated Grizzly. I feel like he's somewhat underrated, and this is maybe just because he's currently around and the team has dipped a little bit the last couple of seasons, but like his resume is getting outrageous. Like, two-time All-Star, which only trails Marc Gasol, who has 3 in the franchise history. Two-time All-Star, two-time block champ, defensive player of the year, 3-time all-defensive team. And oh, by the way, he's second in scoring behind Ja Morant in franchise history on like a per possession basis. Like, he's one of the top scorers in their franchise's history. And like, yeah, he has all those defensive marks. It's incredible. Where I feel like maybe we still sort of underrate how good he is. I'll say, Parker, the guy who showed up in the media vote, who I was really pleased about, and even the fan vote. When I was filling my ballot out, I'm like, these people aren't going to respect Kyle Anderson's contributions to the Grizzlies. I was like, no one's going to recognize all the good stuff he did, all the games he won, how important he was in the postseason. And then I was really happy that like, oh, I think actually he might've finished in the media vote one spot higher than I had him. So I was like, nice. Like, I was like, clearly they got him up there. So I thought I was voting a campaign where like, I got to put Kyle to let people recognize. But again, it goes to the longevity. Like, he's here.
Yep.
I don't have the games list in front of me, but I'm pretty sure he's like top 10 in games played. So it's like, oh, that's going to get him into these lists. Also, I was pleased, Parker, I felt like you did me a favor. You included D'Anthony Melton. I was going
to say,
you had him 25th. Like, there were some that I'm like, I don't think I would have put Melton over some of the guys you left off, but I was pleased. I didn't care. I was happy. I was like, D'Anthony Melton getting his respect from Parker. That guy was good and a part of good Grizzlies teams.
Yep. I mean, for me, it was, look at how much different the Grizzlies performed when they switched from playing Grayson Allen and Marco Guduric to Grayson Allen and D'Anthony Melton.
There you go.
Or when in the 21-22 season, they exploded when they split up Grayson Allen's minutes between D'Anthony Melton and Desmond Bane. Like, they were awesome.
I mean, my famous social media moment of running out of the house thrilled where Grayson Allen got traded to the Bucks. I got pushback where people are like, why are you so happy we lost a good player? It was all about, don't you understand? They're going to play Desmond Bane and D'Anthony Melton now. So like, yeah, that worked out well. I feel like I've been validated.
Yeah. I'm sure you're actually probably surprised I didn't have Grayson on my list.
I'm surprised you didn't have a spot where you split it Grayson Allen and Luke Kennard, just to wedge those guys in.
In my honorable mention, I did have Luke Kennard in my honorable mention.
Okay, there you go.
But I honestly, I'm going to be completely honest. I kind of forgotten about Grayson Allen and Grizzlies history in that sense. So,
well, he falls in that pile of people where there's like, whatever it is, between, let's say, 80 and 150 games played on the team. And there's just so many. And I had trouble, like, guys who weren't included, maybe in let's say the media combined vote, were like Tayshaun Prince, where it's like, he actually started a lot of playoff games. Some of that's because Tony Allen got injured during the regular season and then Tony came off the bench behind Tayshaun. But like, there's guys like Tayshaun Prince and Earl Watson. I mean, Bobby Jackson. I know this is before your time. Courtney Lee, who's lower in the media vote. We're like, that was like an average starter, but an average starter on good teams. And so then how do you weigh all that,
Yeah. See, the thing, it's funny, again, all goes back to memory. Like, my memory with Courtney Lee is everyone being pissed off about how many 3-pointers he passed on.
Yeah, that's funny. And a lot of that's just narrative memory based too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like, I would rather have D'Anthony Melton than Courtney Lee.
Yeah. That just shows you have taste. But like Courtney Lee, obviously played a lot of games. Hakeem Warwick played a lot of games, but was never that good of a player.
Yeah.
I don't know. There are just so many players. Now we're just naming some guys, Grizzlies edition, but it's a fun exercise. Thanks for sparking this conversation. Everybody, if you want to see the whole list we've been talking about, I'll put a link in the show notes, but go to Parker's. I mean, you're not going to spell it right. What do you tell people to Google when they're trying to find your Substack?
I just tell them to go to my Twitter.
Okay.
Like, that's all I said. So just go find me on Twitter.
Check out Parker Fleming. Maybe a Parker Fleming Google research will get you there.
Yeah.
But yeah, go check out Parker's Substack posts to get the rest of this. Listeners, if you want more from me, if you want to play fantasy basketball with me and join my listener Slack channel, do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. Anyway, Parker, thank you so much. Everybody else, have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.